Hey, GameBro Advance here again with another Marvel-themed episode, this time showing you why you should play X-Men Reign of Apocalypse. Developed by Studio Digital Eclipse as one of the GBA's first beat-em-up experiences in 2001, Reign of Apocalypse marked the debut of our favorite cast of mutants on the handheld. In an era where comic book teams like the Avengers, Justice League, Guardians of the Galaxy, and Suicide Squad are dominating mainstream media, it's easy to forget how perfectly adaptable the X-Men were from the early 90s to the mid-2000s. With classic games like the X-Men Arcade, X-Men 2 The Clone Wars for Sega Genesis, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, and X-Men Legends 1 and 2, we were pretty spoiled with high-quality multiplayer X-Men games for a long time. X-Men Reign of Apocalypse features an original plot where Cyclops, Wolverine, Storm, and Rogue are returning from a mission in the Mojoverse, only to wind up in an alternate universe where the X-Mansion has long been destroyed and abandoned, and they must take down Apocalypse to find their way back to their home dimension. With the 4-member roster of X-Men I just mentioned, you'll have to punch, claw, and blast your way through a total of 12 stages. Similar to X-Men the arcade game, each character can do your standard melee attack, jump, and unleash their mutant power. But there is actually a little bit more than that. Buttons A and B are split between light and heavy physical attacks, while R serves as the jump button. The blue bar at the top of the screen will fill up as you do damage, and when that's full you can unleash an uninterruptible combo attack by pressing L, which is known as the Rage attack. Great against tanky enemies and bosses, but very frustrating if you whiff. By combining A and B, you can perform a clear-out attack to help break up enemy crowds with the sacrifice of a little health. Movement feels pretty good here too. By double tapping left or right on the D-pad, you can dash to either close down an enemy or create some space for yourself to avoid damage. An input of down right in A or down left in A can also execute a projectile or lunge attack, which I found myself using and enjoying a lot, and was very reminiscent of firing off a Street Fighter Hadouken. Maybe the developers designed that to be an Easter egg. Overall, the X-Men combat and mobility feels very satisfying. One of my favorite things about Reign of Apocalypse is the stage progression. If you're a longtime X-Men fan, you'll appreciate the variety of locales. The game starts off at the X-Mansion, but from there you get to visit popular X-Men destinations like the Savage Land and Genosha, as well as non-fictional landmarks like the Statue of Liberty and the Golden Gate Bridge, which are great nods to the X-Men movies, albeit the latter wouldn't appear on the big screen until 2006. Throughout each stage, you'll face standard enemy jobbers like Rangers, Weapon Omega, Sentinels, Acolytes, and Hellfire Club thugs. Another highlight for me is the selection of boss characters. Not only does this game include iconic X-Men villains like Sabretooth, Pyro, the Blob, Juggernaut, Silver Samurai, Sauron, and Magneto, but the story converts the rest of the X-Men into brainwashed bosses too. That includes Gambit, Nightcrawler, Colossus, Psylocke, Phoenix, Beast, Cable, and Bishop. As much as I enjoyed the X-Men scenery of each stage, one of the problems of this game is the stage length, and I don't mean that chronologically. There just isn't much real estate from the beginning to end of any stage. Sometimes you'll fight a handful of enemies, and instead of moving ahead, you'll just fight another wave on the same screen. On a related note, a common issue from this previous era of beat-em-ups is fighting off-screen enemies. It can be a struggle to keep them on screen or wait for them to enter and become visible. One of the most impressive features this game does include is multiplayer. Yes, that's right. I've criticized a few games I covered in previous episodes for lacking this, but I can finally call out one that has it. Unfortunately, this wasn't something I could test out, but it's cool to know that they maintain such an important tradition of X-Men games. Not only can you co-op with a friend via GameLink cable, but there's also a versus mode if you're feeling competitive. I was able to get through the game in about 90 minutes, give or take, on the normal difficulty. Also, you can increase the number of continues you get, however the game will reward you with health drops and bonus lives throughout, so that wasn't something I had to rely on. There is a total of 4 save files as well, so if you want to commit each one to a different character, you can do that. Unfortunately for me, I don't see any major incentives to replay X-Men Reign of Apocalypse. Aside from cranking up the difficulty on a second playthrough or using another character, there's little depth. And you'll basically have to in order to do that, as there's no option to change characters once you begin the game. But it would have been nice to see some type of collectible feature or some additional rewards. Even more so, a no-brainer would have been having the rest of the X-Men as unlockables. The fact that they are fully designed and a part of the game but not accessible is criminal. Fan favorites like Gambit and Nightcrawler not being playable is a major tease. All of those shortcomings are definitely the reason the game did not rate better in its reviews, as the game has a 61% Metacritic score. But with the great character sprites and enjoyable combat, I view this game as the closest thing to an X-Men arcade sequel as we've ever gotten. All of the other X-Men games are fantastic, but they serve different gaming genres. So if you're a fan of that original 1991 X-Men arcade game, or you thoroughly enjoy beat-em-ups, I would still recommend Reign of Apocalypse. Sadly, there's no offering of this on modern consoles, and the chances of it appearing in a collection is unlikely. But luckily, the value of a loose cartridge is still relatively low at around $15, so still a great pick to add to your collection if you're a big X-Men fan. Otherwise, this is just one to add to your flash cart, modded 3DS, or whatever your go-to emulation handheld is these days. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Let me know in the comments if you've played X-Men Reign of Apocalypse before or are planning to give it a try. I'd love to check out the multiplayer someday, so if anyone's interested, shoot me a message or leave me a comment and let's coordinate. Thanks for watching.